The United States government, and why I fucking hate it. The two-party system in the United States government has slowly morphed into two right-wing parties that have different views on many things, but they both benefit from the billionaires in the country that control fucking everything. Everything in the government has become for money instead of for the people. The Democratic Party, if placed in the context of any other highly developed Western country, would be considered very right-wing. The United States military spending, the United States spends more on the military than the next 9 countries combined. The U.S. has the 3rd largest standing army in the world. In 9/11, the Commission of the Wartime Contracting in Iraq and Afghanistan stated that 31 to 60 billion spent in Iraq and Afghanistan has been lost to fraud and waste. The U.S. defense should have to pass an individual audit to eliminate the fraud and waste. The U.S. military has been the only federal agency that is unable to pass an audit. Congress has been asking for 30 years for them to pass an audit, and they can't fucking do it because there's so much corruption. In 2019, 22,000 active duty service members in America had to go on food stamps in order to buy groceries. Recently, the government has recommended all soldiers in America to go on food stamps to help with rising inflation. The U.S. prison system and for-profit private prisons. The United States has the highest incarceration rate of any other in the world. About 716 people per 100,000 are incarcerated. This is a 500% increase in the last 40 years. The country with the 2nd highest is the UK, with 147 per 100,000 people. This also has to do with the Americans that make up 13.5% of the population. This also has to do with the racist systems that are in place in America. African Americans only make up 13.5% of the population in the United States, but make up 38% of people incarcerated in the U.S. in 2022. This isn't due to racial stereotypes that black men are violent. It's due to the prisons, the systems that fight against them. There are roughly 10 million people currently in the prison system, including people in jail and prison, people on parole, and people awaiting trial. This number is higher than the amount of people imprisoned in the USSR at the height of its power. The U.S. represents 4% of the world population, but 22% of the world's imprisoned population. For this reason of such high prison populations, but countries with slight, the U.S. prison system does nothing to do with the people in prison. The idea of...
Can you fucking read?
I'm dyslexic! The idea of prison was to rehabilitate people into being functioning adults. Instead, 82% of people that were sent to prison are sent back within the next 10 years of their release. This clearly shows that that there's barely any attempt to reform prisoners and people.
Keep reading.
Fuck you. The lack of reform is due to the for-profit way of the United States prison system. Many companies are more than willing to sell non-nutritious food to prisons because it's cheap to produce and easy to profit off of. Votes in prison have a disgusting pay-per-minute rate because they know it's the prisoner's only option. Transport companies also profit off of shuttling people to and from trials and between prisons. The United States prison system also uses prisoners for modern-day slavery. Prisons in California are put to work require payment to prisoners for labor at all. Oh. I don't know if I can go on. Yeah.
Where am I? The war on drugs? Private prisons.
Private prisons. Overcrowded in public.
I am reading it.
Speak normally.
Overcrowding in public prisons became an issue in the 1980s due to the war on drugs. The solution to this issue was private prisons. These private prisons were built through the government contracting a private company to build a prison. That company locks up the overflow prisons. The company receives a fixed rate per prison they lock up. This is the main reason why the U.S. is so unwilling to reform prisons. It would damage the profits of thousands of U.S. companies. Water. Many of these private prisons have lockup quotas that are mostly 90% occupancy. This means that even when crime rates are the lowest, they have been in years, private prisons are finding ways to imprison people to continue making money. Kids for cash scandal. Look it up. The war on drugs was dumb. The war on drugs was supposed to help eradicate drug usage in America, but didn't at all. Nixon believed that he had two main groups of people against him, black people and anti-war leftists, and he felt that his campaign in 1986 would be in trouble. Nixon knew he wouldn't be outwardly discriminatory to these groups, so he decided to publicly associate the anti-left war with marijuana and the blacks with crack and heroin, criminalizing the drugs heavily. By doing this, he could throw his biggest threat to being rejected. In prison and being arrested leaders of groups against him, he could easily win the election. In 1972, he commissioned unanimously recommended that Nixon decriminalize the possession and sale of marijuana from personal use, but he ignored it. In the 1980s, there was a new drug which swept the nation of America and is still around today, crack cocaine. This drug tragically ruined the lives of many people and their families and sent many to prison for extremely hard sentences, and in the 80s and 90s, incarcerated rates of nonviolent drug offenses exponentially climbed from 50,000 in 1980 to over 400,000 in 1997. Once Reagan took office in 1981, they became a highly publicized anti-drug campaign. Around the time, Chief Daryl Gates founded DARE, a drug education program taught to middle schoolers. Despite DARE's ineffectiveness, it was quickly adopted nationwide. Chief Gates stated, casual drug users should be taken out and shot. Extremely harsh drug policies were implemented during this time to block the expansion of harm reduction programs such as syringe access programs that aim to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS through used needles. Due to the spread of hysteria about drugs, harsh penalties increased in Congress and state legislation. The way law enforcement was trying to stop the illicit drug trade also made things worse, such as when police were aggressively during drug intervention where there are more violent drug crimes. The war on drugs had a disproportionate effect on lower income and minority communities. After Clinton got into office, he advocated for treatment instead of incarceration, but soon reverted to the ways of by continuing the drug war. Clinton rejected a proposal to eliminate disparity between crack and powdered cocaine, and also recommended that they end the funding of syringe programs. Despite this, in his last month of office, he states we really need a re-examination of entire policy on imprisonment. Meow.
Thank you. We'll be back, hopefully.
Meow. 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 Meow.
I hate the United States government.
Wait, can we continue after the set?
Yeah, you gotta stay to be continued.
To be continued.